The beginning of the end is 2024 when Airbnb finally goes bankrupt. Today we're going to explore what exactly is happening with Airbnb. Why would Airbnb founders and co-founders be liquidating their stocks right now? We'll also take a look at the black market that is starting to form for current and old Airbnb hosts. Now that there are bans across the nation, Airbnb owners are trying to find creative ways to continue the scheme going on despite the law restrictions. We're also going to look at the fact that most Airbnbs right now no longer even cash flow. I'm going to take us back into history and we're going to look at the timeline of Airbnb and try to figure out what exactly happened.
If you're a home buyer, somebody or a young person looking to buy a home, you need a bit of a reset.
There is a possibility on the other side of this that inflation could actually be quite low.
Welcome back to Real Estate Mindset. Today's video is going to be absolutely bonkers. Now, the data is in, and today we're going to go over all of the information about Airbnb, and I'm going to tell you guys why you should not, under any circumstances, purchase an Airbnb property right now. What most investors are doing right now is staying obsessed with having to purchase. It's like they have to purchase, like they're crack fiends, and they're purchasing Airbnbs right now with high interest rates, DSCR loans, and the inability to cash flow for long-term rentals. And I'm just going to also point out that most of these loans are non-QM loans, which means the borrowers and the homeowners have very little recourse and rights from foreclosure and delinquency. So there is a storm, a catastrophic storm brewing in the Airbnb market. And where I want to start is insider trading. Generally, when we see founders and co-founders start to sell an overwhelming amount of their stock, generally they know something that we don't know about something bad that's going to happen. But I wanted to point out that currently insiders own 30.84% of Airbnb, and the total amount of insider trading in just the last 12 months is $842 million worth of insider trading. Now take a look at this tweet here, guys, from Macro Edge. Now, according to Macro Edge, Airbnb founder Joe Gebbia has sold nearly 50% of his remaining positions as of filings today. That is of November 17th. So if everything is going okay, generally, the founders, again, you guys, are not going to sell their stock. The fact that they're selling their stock is not even going down that much, to me is just completely backwards. Airbnb right now has mega problems. And not only the founder, Nathan, the co-founder, has also started liquidating massive amounts of shares as well. October and November alone, this man has sold roughly $10.5 million worth of shares. So again, we have the founder, we have the co-founder selling stocks like crazy, absolutely no buying. There is only selling. To me, what makes sense is they want to sell when the stock prices are high, and more than likely, they expect stock prices to decline, probably as a result of the cinching down of regulations on Airbnb finally starting to play out. But look at how high their stock is. It's $126. The 52-week high is $154. But I suspect that sucker right there, especially going into 2024, is going to absolutely plummet because, again, the massive amount of restrictions and overwhelming amount of saturation with Airbnb. Let's go over the timeline of Airbnb. A lot of people don't realize how Airbnb started. Essentially, the idea was created all the way back in 2007. Now, they launched their website on August 11th in 2008 as airbedandbreakfast.com. Comment below if you remember the original name. August and November of 2008, they finally got enough funding to take their business to the next level. March of 2009, that is when they changed their name to airbnb.com. February of 2011 was a usage milestone. Airbnb announces 1 millionth booking since the website launched in August of 2008. 11 months later, in January of 2012, they had another usage milestone of 5 million bookings. So in 11 months, it quadrupled in popularity. Pretty crazy, you guys. At the beginning of 2012, that's when Airbnb started doing international expansion and dooming the entire world instead of just the US. About 6 months later, in June of 2012, they had 10 million bookings. So in a year and a half, they had a 10-time come up on bookings. Massive popularity with Airbnb. Look at August of 2020. That is when Airbnb announces it has filed for the initial public offering. Maybe Airbnb started out like a great idea, but what happened is people and investors are so greedy, they started opening up Airbnbs where they shouldn't have, basically all over the place across the US. Landlords figured out that by converting homes to Airbnbs versus long-term rentals, that they would make a substantial amount of money. And once people started realizing they can make a substantially more money doing Airbnbs or short-term rentals, a lot of people went all in. In fact, today there are still people purchasing Airbnbs like crack addicts. So the question is, again, you guys, what happened? According to this article, Airbnb knows people are unhappy. The CEO has acknowledged that tens of thousands of complaints across social media about the platform's growing costliness. It knows that hosts' expenses are going up. It knows there's crime, hidden cameras, sex trafficking in Dallas. I mean, the crime that Airbnbs brings into these residential neighborhoods alone is grounds for a permanent ban around the country. And I understand if you own a house, you should have the rights to that. But y'all that own these Airbnbs are treating them like lodges and hotels in residential neighborhoods, and that's not fair. And I would like to know how many people that own Airbnbs are living next to one. Metros are starting to crack down more and more and more on Airbnbs. In fact, hotels are lobbying, casinos, everyone wants, except the owners, wants Airbnbs removed. New York over the last couple months has gone into the enforcement stage of Airbnb. We'll talk about that in a minute and how that's created a black market of Airbnb listings. But right now, who I'm really paying attention to is Dallas, because Dallas has had the strictest regulations for Airbnb, essentially banning Airbnbs, as they should, in my opinion, from residential zoning. So you can't have an Airbnb in a residential neighborhood. Now that enforcement starts in January. The next major thing is going to see how these people plan on enforcing illegally ran short-term rentals. And you guys, here's the crazy thing. Some places have become entire Airbnb towns, an entire town of Airbnbs. Like this article is mentioning, a town that become one giant Airbnb is now facing a reckoning. The impacts of the Airbnb meltdown will be felt in many, many ways. We're only looking at the inventory, but the crisis that will have on families, on companies, on businesses is overwhelming. Now, before the pandemic in this town, there was 400 properties for rent. Now there's 2,400 properties to rent. Now, the name of this is Hutchetown, Oklahoma. So Hutchetown, Oklahoma has went from 400 to 2,400. That is insane, you guys. The boost is an economic force that is reshaping the town, forcing upgrades from roads to sewers. And in some places like Las Vegas, is putting an overwhelming burden on police enforcement. So again, Airbnb's very bad. If it's me, I ain't touching it. There's no way that I'm investing in Airbnbs when the entire world hates them for justifiable reasons. Here's the problem with this oversaturation. The third bullet point here, they're losing money. They're not making as much money as they were before. Primary reason that is because now that the cat's out of the bag and everyone understands how profitable Airbnb can be, everyone wants a part of it. And because there's so much inventory and the demand is not keeping up with the inventory, these people are making a lot less money than they were before. Now, the problem with that is most people are overextended when it comes to the type of loan and financing that they have. So a lot of these people, if they have the slightest decline in Airbnb income, they can no longer afford their mortgage, or rather they're not breaking even anymore. They will start losing money. New York's Airbnb is descending into pure chaos. People are listing short-term rentals on social media now and lesser-known platforms, bolstering the rental black market in New York City. What's happening right now is instead of owners getting ahead of this, they're putting their heads in the sand and they're going to ride this off until the very end, and they're going to find any way that they can to get around these new bans. And that is creating an entirely separate market, because the thing here, guys, is generally in order for the metro and state to even regulate the Airbnbs, a lot of the time they're going to Airbnb directly. So if those homeowners are no longer using that platform and they're using, say, Facebook, it's going to create a more difficult time for these metro areas to enforce it. And I'm going to tell you right now, literally go to Facebook, right now, go to the marketplace and type in Airbnb and see what comes up. Something like this is probably going to come up where they're even using the name Airbnb. So they know that they're being ran illegally. But in order to market it on Facebook Marketplace, they're using Airbnb in the description. You can see it, $99. Airbnb, daily rental apartment, Texas Medical Center, free shuttle to the hospital. Airbnb rent, $1. Apartment for rent, $1. I mean, the black market right now for Airbnb and short-term rentals is exploding. I'm telling people right now, do not buy Airbnbs, at the very least, let everything kind of shake out and figure out what regulations are coming next. I mean, people are breaking the law. Right now, the thing is even if people wanted to buy and convert to an Airbnb right now, you almost can't even do it. It doesn't even make sense anymore. But again, people are like crackheads when it comes to Airbnb. Now, when I go to this website, Rabu, I think it's called, it will be linked in my description. This is really cool because this actually analyzes MLS data to tell you guys whether or not it would cash flow and work as an Airbnb rental. And you can see right now, I mean, look at the left-hand side here. I mean, there's absolutely nothing that's a good deal. There's not cash flowing. I mean, look at this. You purchased this house for $1.1 million and the revenue is $2,000 a month. The cap rate's 0.3. Why would I want to buy a house at a cap rate of 0.3 when I can buy treasuries at 5.3% and it's risk-free? I mean, look at this, guys. I mean, everything here is at a loss. Nothing will cash flow, even with Airbnb. And if it does cash flow, it's barely cash flowing and not enough to justify buying it. We have treasuries that are yielding more than that. And we don't even have to deal with the tenant. I mean, you guys, the fact of the matter is right now there's so much going on with Airbnb. It makes it a horrible investment. And the only thing that's going to happen here is we just need more time. There are some metro areas when we go to AirDNA that have 3 to 4 times more listings for short-term rentals than they do in the entire MLS, whether it's a house for sale or whether it's a house for rent. There's so much inventory in STRs right now that if there was a nationwide ban, that would give us essentially overnight the inventory that we would need to have substantial price decline. Because again, the prices are propped up right now because there's no inventory, but there was just enough buying demand to where it was okay. Well, right now the buying demand is absolutely being crushed and inventory is going up in winter months, which never happens. I think it's going to be very important to watch Airbnb moving forward and really what happens there. Now, personally, I'm going to be watching Las Vegas, New York, and Dallas just to see if we can see a noticeable increase in inventory. Many of these Airbnb owners cannot convert to long-term rental because the loans that they have are 8, 9, 10% interest rates and they cannot cash flow. So the distressed and the forced selling, it's fair to say it might not initially come from consumers in foreclosure. I think the turmoil is going to start with investors, specifically you guys, mom and pop shop type investors that purchased Airbnbs but really knew nothing about real estate and kept their heads in the sand about the regulations and bans that were coming. I mean, think about it. If you own an Airbnb right now, you can't act surprised. I mean, it's everywhere in the news. Airbnb is under attack. And do me a favor, okay? I get so much criticism. I want to know how you guys feel. Do you feel like this is an overreach for the government to get involved? Or do you feel like Airbnbs are like hotels and should not be permitted in residential neighborhoods? Seriously, guys, let me know what you think. There's a whole bunch of people that are on both sides of the argument. Personally, again, I think there's a place for everything, and I don't believe you should put a lodge and hotel in a residential neighborhood. But I want to know what you think. And other than that, guys, I really hope you guys got some new insights, value, and perspective. And if you're out there investing in real estate, you know I wish you luck, and I hope you win.
I almost think you'd scare the public if you put this out. Like, why are they telling me this? Should I be concerned about my bank? I think you've got to think of the unintended consequences of taking a public that has more full faith and confidence in the banking system than maybe people in this room do.
Just close the door. Close the door.